here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Make sure you like, follow, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Today we are going to get into something a little different. We're going to shift the conversation because September is Suicide Prevention Awareness Month. So I do want to shed light on this very heavy issue and much needed conversation. So here in the studio, I got my girl Erica. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. It's always good when we link up though.
It is. It's good. So just kind of give us a little rundown, because my rule is, who are you? So let everybody kind of know who you are, what you do, what you're about, all that good stuff.
Absolutely. So, well, first of all, my name is Erica Townsend, in my regular life, but in the coaching world, I'm known as LA Townsend.
Okay.
And I'm a resilience coach. And as a resilience coach, what I do is I help women recover from childhood trauma through, overcoming setbacks and accepting responsibilities and creating new expectations for themselves. And that all stems from my passion for suicide prevention. I actually have an organization that is focused on suicide prevention, and it's called Be Resilient. And I feel like resilience is like a huge theme, especially like during this pandemic. And like that's my passion. Like I've overcome suicide attempts and depression, so I just kind of want to be like a GPS for people. Like you in depression, but hey, let me be the GPS and direct you out of it, and let you know that hey, there's a way out of this darkness. Like I'm living proof. I'm literally God's living proof that there's hope on the other side of whatever you're going through.
Okay. So I do want to kind of go back a little bit. So how long have your organization?
So originally, I want to say 2014. So it's evolved from then. Then it was called Anti-Suicide Jesus the Answer, and then God just continues to evolve it, and right now it is Be Resilient. And so just because we want to be able to take our message everywhere, and so God has just created avenues and ways for us to do this. And one of our main goals is to get people certified in suicide prevention methods, and
Okay.
Especially parents, teaching them how to speak to their kids, because those are where we see the rates rising up. Like we've seen kids as young as 4 years old commit suicide. And so that's our mission. Like it's been my mission and my passion since 2014.
Since 2014.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So I guess like this whole, it's a very touchy, taboo type of elephant in the room.
Yes.
Type of conversation.
Yes.
That a lot of people don't want to talk about. They're embarrassed to talk about.
They don't know how to talk about it.
They don't know how to talk about it. But in your experience, so you're saying you went all the way back to 2014.
Yes.
And this is where this idea or this mission, this vision, this purpose really birthed.
Yeah, well, actually, I connected with, it was God. I can't even explain. I connected with a young lady in Miami. And I just said, hey, I love what you're doing. How can I support you? And it just so happened that at that time, God had told her that it was time for her to expand her vision. And she was like trying to figure out, she's like, I don't know anybody outside of Miami, God. How am I going to do this? And then I contacted her from Detroit, Michigan, and we just connected it and we just grew it from there. And like I said, it's just evolved in so many ways. Like this just become like, a bigger mission. At first it was just kind of something to do, like, hey, outside of work, kind of like a hobby, but like it literally was like birthed into a passion and showed me like my purpose.
Okay. To really get on the suicide prevention.
Yeah, and to make it just, talk about it. Because like you said, it's taboo, especially in our community. We don't talk about it. Like, I've had people tell me, like, yeah, when I was younger, I told my mom, I'm depressed and I feel like I want to hurt myself. And their mom response was, don't tell nobody that. They're going to think you crazy. And like, how often are we told that in our community? Like, it's like, it's kind of like a quote unquote white people. Black people don't do that. They don't kill themselves. Like, that's not true. Like, and I feel like that's what we want to do is like get to where it's something we talk about our kids, we talk about sex with our kids, we talk about college, and we talk about all these things, but we don't speak to them about depression, and we just kind of think they're just normal teens, and like some of that stuff is normal, but a lot of it isn't. Especially like these kids are facing way more pressures than we had to deal with.
Yeah. So, in your personal experience, in your personal connection, you say you was a little girl and you told your mother that you was depressed.
Well, no, that's something that somebody told that just when I meet people and they're sharing their stories as we're out and they're like we had a event where we were on the Riverwalk. We just had pictures of people of various backgrounds, races on backpacks, and people would stop and say, "Hey, what's this?" And I would say, "Hey, she's 14, she committed suicide," or he was 27, and once we got to talk to people, connect, people were like, "Wow, I went through that," or "I experienced that," and they were sharing their stories. And me personally, I never expressed because I didn't even know what it was at 16 and 15, 16. I didn't know what it was, what depression was. I just know that I had overwhelming feelings, and I felt like the only way that I could just even like deal with it and get over it was to kill myself. And so that's that's where that passion was birthed, like unknowingly. I didn't even really realize it, but that's where that came from. That night when I took those pills in the bathroom, and by the grace of God, I was set here, for a purpose and a reason. And so, like I just said, it's just so I just wanted to become. I don't want to say a normal conversation because it shouldn't be a normal conversation. But if we don't talk about it and it stays hidden, like those are people that are being left in the dark.
Yeah. And I do want to kind of just shift the conversation just a little. Like, where do you think, like, in your opinion, where depression itself stems from? Like, because a lot of people say, okay, well, it's a chemical imbalance. It's a psychological disorder. I mean, because it is diagnosed in a DSM. But oftentimes, our environment plays a very big role.
Yes.
I'm going to say probably 95% of the time.
Yeah, I would probably even up it up to that.
And I'm being nice about saying 95%.
Absolutely.
But, yeah, I would guess that it's probably a high percentage of people that's affected by their community, the lack of resources, home life, lack of support. I mean, the list goes on and on and on and on and on. And for me, just working in the mental health industry, I have seen like so many people that has come in with depression, and I'm gonna put that in quotation, right? Quotation, right? Because I mean, at least that's what the paperwork says. The paperwork says that you're manic depressive, you're I mean, like all of these issues, right? You have all of these different codes just lined up, right? But no one ever takes the time to think about, okay, well, what was home like? Are you homeless? Can you feed yourself?
Absolutely.
The lack of resources that's within the community. Like, how often, I could just say, just in my personal experience and, just working in the field, how many people have said, I have nothing to live for because everything that I work for has been taken away. That's not a chemical imbalance.
No, and I think, like, so even in my coaching, like, so the reason I say I focus on helping women recover from childhood trauma is because, like, myself, as I began to get older, even in my marriage, I noticed some issues that occurred. I had to, like, take a step back and realize they were all rooted from a childhood trauma. Like from the divorce of my parents, from being molested, all of those things manifested as an adult. And I feel like as adults, there are a lot of people carrying around those childhood traumas. So when we ask about, like, what's the cause of depression, we can get into, like, the chemical imbalance, all that. But, like, really, let's talk about the root. There's a root cause to when we start digging deep and you getting down to their childhood, you say, oh, that's where it came from. Like, I was 27, and it took me to realize, hey, when I was 13, this incident that occurred at 13 and 12, that was the root cause of my depression all the way up to an adult. And I feel like that's the core of it. It's getting to the root. That's what I like to do through my coaching. And when I meet people, it's just sitting and really talking and dealing with, like, let's get beyond the surface level. I know you lost your job and you can't, but why can't you overcome that? Why is it so overwhelming? Well, that's probably because as a child, you weren't given the tools or put in an environment that would give you the support to help you to learn how to, overcome. So that's why when you lose your job, it's just like, that's it. I'm done.
I'm done.
Yeah, and for us, it seemed like that's so small. Like, but it's not. It's really just like a buildup of things over time, and that's just like the final straw for like a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah. I'm going to pause for a quick break and then I'm going to bring my other guests in. Everybody, you are watching The Glow Up with Nikki. We are here streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. Make sure you like, follow, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. This is WJZZ TV, the coolest station in the world. So I want to kind of throw the ball because I have another guest in the studio. Lloyd, welcome. How are you?
Yeah, I'm doing
Thank
all right.
you for
Yourself?
coming.
Oh, indeed. I wouldn't miss this for the world.
Well, thanks for coming. So, it is a rule that I have. When someone comes on my show, I want to get all up in your business.
Oh, indeed.
All right. So just kind of, let the listeners know who you are and what kind of brings you into this conversation.
Okay, well, my name is Floyd Brantley. I'm a Army veteran. I do a little bit of this and that, photography. I'm currently working on a project that's kind of falling in line with the magazine I'm starting. And what I'm trying to focus a lot on is mental health in the black community. Because one thing is something that we don't really talk about as much. It's such a stigma in the community, and it shouldn't be. Mm-hmm. And the silence that we have surrounding that is literally killing us because when you look at a lot of things that happen in our community, depression and mental health issues are behind a lot of it. But because we would rather bury that, that's a white folks, that's a white man's disease. You know what I'm saying? We'd rather do that because it's easier for us to deal with instead of saying, oh, well, my child is depressed, my child is schizophrenic, my child is bipolar. So that's just something that's been going on with us forever. So I'm working on a project right now, and I've talked to you about it before, where I want to get in contact with people that are either live with depression, know people that live with not just depression but mental health issues, work with people who suffer from mental health issues, or are mental health professionals, so we can get their perspective of it. Because my whole goal since I was diagnosed in 2007 with major depression was to make my crusade to get out there and actually spread awareness of this condition.
Okay. Well, thank you for joining us. We are actually just making the connection between suicide prevention in the black community. Because, next month is actually National Bullying Awareness Month.
Yep.
I wish it was this month because it goes
hand
in hand.
Yep.
How often have you heard of someone literally committing suicide online? Like on Facebook Live. It has been a couple cases.
I would say more than a couple.
And I'm being...
Yeah, that's being generous, unfortunately.
Unfortunately. It's very unfortunate. So what are some of the signs to actually look for as it pertains to prevention or just to let parents know?
Well, within my organization, we experienced this personally. I'm an organization called Group 5 Group Social Fellowship Incorporated. It's a social fellowship built on a fraternal model. And we had a situation in 2010, where we had a brother that he left a note. It was like a poem or something like that, and he just put it out there for the fellowship to read. And when they was reading this, oh wow, this is deep. This is whatever. But me, one, living with depression itself, myself, right, and then two, being a three-time suicide survivor myself. When I read that, I knew automatically what it was. But by the time that I saw it, it was already too late. See, what ended up happening is that this letter came out after the fact. My man has actually committed suicide. He went to an abandoned house somewhere in the woods in the South and hung himself. Wasn't a lynching. He actually hung himself because he basically outlined it in his letter. So a lot of the times we, especially as black men, you know, when you look into society, right, for us to talk about how we feel is looked upon as weak. You know, and we're built like that from when we're young. You know, boys don't cry. You know, women are allowed to show their feelings. They're encouraged. We're supposed to bottle ourselves up. So when we get older, it not only creates issues within our relationships, right, but even when our own mental health, because we have so much pent up stuff that we have to deal with. We can't go out and tell nobody. Don't let us be in the leadership position because who do we have to run home to? You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times, our only solution is the final solution. That's the way we feel. We feel like we're backed up into a corner.
That's true. Yeah, I'm glad you kind of touched on that because you know how they say like game recognize game. Like if you've been through it, you can kind of see the signs. So I tell parents because my goal is to bridge the gap between suicide prevention and the church.
Okay.
Because I have this young lady, she used to volunteer with us, but she moved away, and she was saying whenever we had an event and if it was at a church, she would not come. She said I can't step foot in a church because when she was younger and she was depressed, she went to her pastors. Those are her leaders. And they said, you know why you feel that way? It's because you don't have enough faith.
Yeah.
That was their reply. That was their answer.
So the church said this.
Yes. And I feel like that's the black church, that's their answer. You know, let's just pray it away. Like, I'm fortunate to be under pastors. Like, they understand and recognize, like, you know, mental health, like, is really happening. Like, I've shared before, like, you know, pastors are the third occupation that have the highest suicide rates after doctors and lawyers. Like, it's no mistake that these are all people whose jobs are to help other people. It's kind of like how you talked about black men. Like, they can't go to other people. So that's my goal because, like I said, there's a gap there in helping them learn the signs. Like, and I tell people, like, there's a list of signs, and you don't have to go, like, oh, but, you know, the case by case. But if you see 2 or 3 that are alarming, say something. Because the number one thing I tell people is if you feel like your friend is suicidal and you don't want to say something because you feel like it'll trigger them, it's the complete opposite. They're dying for you to say something. Say, hey, are you feel like you want to hurt yourself? Sometimes that's a sign of relief. So when you see someone that you always know is, you know, happy, outgoing, they begin to withdraw themselves or they begin to, you know, give away stuff. Say, hey, you give me your PS5, you just bought that. Like, no, I don't need it no more. Like, those are all signs that we should just be aware. That's why I know we get caught up in the social media and we got to have our own lives and keeping up an image. But it's so important to just reach out to people and, you know, check on them and see, like, hey, I seen you posting online or I haven't seen you posting online. Like, I have people I only know on Facebook and they always post. Every so often I don't see them. I'll inbox them like, hey, are you okay? And they'll be like, oh, I'm just going through something, so I haven't been on social media. But, like, that means the world to people. Just those small, simple check-ins. Like, hey, I see you posting online or you posting, you know, all of a sudden they start posting a certain type of way. You like, that's not really like Ivy, that's not really like, she really positive. All of a sudden I see her posting, you know, sad songs and, you know, lyrics and all that. Like, I know that's not her. Let me just go in and check. Like, all those are like signs. Like, when you see someone that's like not themselves or they're doing things that are out of character, like, you can't just chalk it up to, she just wants attention. Yeah. She just seeking attention.
And, you know, and I think, you know, that's very unfortunate that a lot of people think that suicidal ideations are attention-seeking behaviors. But it is very important to actually recognize what the signs are, what to really look for. And, you know, I'm glad that you said game recognized game, because that is the most key component in every type of situation, because you have an eye that a lot of professionals don't have. You know, like, a lot of professionals can say, okay, they're delusional, they're psychotic,
they'll try to diagnose it some kind of way that they were trained to look at it as opposed to experiencing it.
Than the actual experience. So experience is the best teacher.
That's what they say.
That's what they say. But it's true,
it
though.
It's so true.
It's so true. You know, so when we're talking suicide prevention, just the whole awareness component. So you go inside of the churches.
Yeah, so that's our goal is to so I don't really like to go inside of churches because people have, like I said, they have church hurt. So, but
a lot of people.
Yeah, but God is everywhere. So it's cool. We could be in the rec center basement. Guess what? God gonna show up. So that's not a concern. So it's just, dealing with, getting pastors and other, leaders in the church, having events where they can come and they can see, like, hey, this is an issue. This is what's going on with your congregation. Like, we can't just pray it away. Like, I mean, we can have Jesus and a therapist. I say that all the time. Like, you can have Jesus and a therapist. It's fine. He created therapists for a reason.
Yeah, or Jesus might be telling you to go see a therapist.
Yeah, because at the time your faith isn't strong enough to where I could just pray and I'm not there yet. I need to speak to I need to look at somebody that looks like me. Hey, let me go see Ivy. I can sit down with you. You look like me. I can relate to you. You're an actual person. You can share your experience. Like, people need that. And I think it's important that we get that, in the church. Like I said, just bridge that gap between church and mental health. Like, it's, we've a few years ago there was a pastor. He had a sermon series about overcoming depression. Whole time he was going through depression, and eventually he committed suicide. So it's like they had no idea at the time he was preaching to them, but he really was preaching to himself, trying to get himself out of that depression. And they had no idea that he was going through that. They just like, it's a pastor. But had there been a safe space, I feel like, where he could have said, hey, I need to take a break from the church. I'm going through, X, Y, Z. But he couldn't because the church is a taboo issue in the church. Like, there's times when people commit suicide, you can have the funeral in here, but you can't mention that in obituary. Yep. We don't want you to say that. Yep. Like, I've seen that happen so often. It's like, really? Like, yeah, and I mean, families do it. The church doesn't even have to always be the one. Sometimes family, we're not going to tell them that they died because they killed themselves. We're going to say, she was sick. Or we're just not going to say it all.
They're more concerned about the cause of death than they are to the fact that they actually died.
Yeah, and not knowing that their death could actually help someone else. Yeah. So they can recognize, like, oh, wow, those were the signs. I didn't see it then, but now I see it.
And I like to piggyback off of that for a minute, too, though. Okay. When I first got my diagnosis, again, like I said, I made it my crusade to go out there, one, to learn all I can about it, and also so I can go ahead and spread awareness about it. So the first thing I did, I went to actually look up the suicide numbers. I'm on different rates. Among white folks, among Asians, among Latinos, but among black folks, there are no true hard numbers. The reason being because a lot of numbers, a lot of suicides in the black community are not reported as suicides. So they'll give you a hard number. Oh yeah, X amount of white folks, commit suicide every year. X amount of Asians commit suicide a year. X amount of Latinos commit suicide. But there are no hard numbers of suicides within the black community, because that's another thing that we don't talk about. Just like with depression, we don't talk about it. But as we start talking about it, then we can start alleviating those conditions with depression that lead to suicide. We just have to stop making it a stigma. That's something that was started 40, 50, 100 years ago. And we just have to. It's something that we have to get rid of.
The mental health stigma.
Yes.
Well, mental illness, yes. I should say.
Yes.
Because a lot of people want to put mental health and mental illness in the same category, and it's not.
Yeah, I think that's something probably that needs to be clarified as well.
So let me speak on that for a minute, y'all. So mental health is taking care of your personal self, your well-being. Mental illness is when something is a little off, something is a little different. You feel a little different. You act a little different. There's no difference between being a schizophrenic and being a diabetic.
Those are all diagnoses. Those are all health issues.
There's not.
Right.
But my question is, why is it that, people get shamed for having a psychotic break, yet they're sent flowers if they have a heart attack?
The one thing that I've always thought about, as far as Yeah, the one thing I figured I thought about, since, like I said, I've been on this path, right, is that as black folks, we are proud of the fact that we are so strong, right? Because we've been through so much stuff in this country. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, we've been through this, been through that. We're too strong to be depressed, right?
But
it's that
post traumatic slave disorder is real.
They actually did a study where Gen X, the Gen X generation, the Jews of victims of the Holocaust, were showing symptoms of PTSD that they can tie to the Holocaust. So if they can do that to them, then yeah, they can definitely do that to us, because we're only literally 50 years removed from Jim Crow. When it was the law of the land. So I fully believe that. It's like the trauma that we got for literally, if they can give the Jews, they say, okay, this generation is suffering when their parents suffered from like 6 years of it, right? Then you think that the black experience in America, that was like 400 years, right?
And still going.
Then there's no question that that's a gene that could be passed down. That it's genetic. So yeah, I fully agree with that, 100%.
Yeah, and I think it's because, like he said, we're like taught to have, like, we have to be strong because we've overcome so much. But it's just like, my husband and I speak about this all the time. Like, I could just imagine how many undiagnosed cases of PTSD there are in the black community. Like, it's not normal to be 13 years old and see your brother get killed in front of you and you go to school the next day. Like, that's not normal. But when you speak to these kids, they say it as if it's a normal thing. Like, oh yeah, my mom, I found my mom dead on the couch with a needle in her arm.
Yep. And that's a and
they just go about their day. And you know what I'm saying? The people in the community, we just accept it as, hey, it's part of the black experience. So there's no way you could be depressed about it. There's no way you could be schizophrenic. Like, that's just your uncle just crazy. Like, I have family members who I truly believe are bipolar and has never been diagnosed, but we just accept it as, oh, they're a Gemini. Or they're, like, we just accept it as, we just brush it off. Yeah, like, we just, like, that's just a personality. I'm like, no, that's not normal for her to be friendly to me today, and the next day I see her, she walk right past me and we're family. Like, that's not normal. Like, but we brush it off as that's just us because, it's just, they had to go through so much, and it's like, that's not normal. And we always, black people, we always thought what goes on in the house stays in the house. And that's been so detrimental to our community. Like, it's not even funny. Like, that's, like, like I said, the girl, her mama was like, don't tell nobody you feel like that. They gonna think you crazy.
Yep.
Like, nah, if she tells somebody, they gonna recognize, oh, you need help. Like, but we're always taught to just keep to ourselves and, keep it going, you know what I'm saying, and brush it off like, hey, it's cool that your best friend got killed in front of you. This is like, y'all see the Bobby Brown story? And you see how many people connected to him died, and it's like, not, back then we just thought he was crazy, but it makes sense as an adult. You like, yeah, he has some mental issues. Like, it wasn't normal to be surrounded by that much death growing up by people close to you and think you're expected to grow up and be, a normal functioning society, member of society. Like, that's not normal at all. Like you said, like, people get flowers when they have a heart attack. I think it's because the cause. If you have a heart attack, I know it's because, well, you do eat 3 cheeseburgers every week, or, you know what I'm saying, or you diabetic, or you overweight. Like, I can see it and recognize it. But with mental health, it's kind of like, people hide it, and you kind of like, you
have a psychotic break, and now you crazy.
And they leave it up, and that's it.
Yeah.
They don't check on you. They just like,
they be like, I'm Xing you out.
Yeah, I don't want to be around that. I'm not, and it's like, it's so sad, but
yeah, because a lot of times I think people really just don't understand, especially when you talk about depression, and this is something I had to learn. Like, I got diagnosed in 2008. I had people telling me that, hey, I think you might be depressed, like as far back as 2004. So I'm like, I didn't really understand it, and I was going through it, right? So it's like, I can only imagine, like, okay, somebody that's not living with it, that don't understand what depression is, for me to try to explain to them what depression is, they still wouldn't understand it. Once I started learning, right, I'll explain, oh man, I can't get up. I want to get out the bed, but I literally can't. My body feel like it weigh a ton. But to somebody that's looking at me, oh man, he just lazy. He just sits in the bed all day. He lazy. They don't understand that mental health is as much physical as it is mental. You know what I mean? It's not just a mental thing. It's not emotions. It affects you from head to toe, physically and mentally.
Yep, inside and outside.
I do want to take this break really quick. Everyone, you are watching the Glow Up with Nikki. We are here streaming live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. You are watching Wjzz TV, the coolest station in the world. If you want to join this conversation, make sure you do so. Just hit us up, 313-355-6018. If you're just joining the conversation, we are talking suicide prevention and mental illness. We're not talking about mental health. We're talking about mental illness, especially in the Black community. So this is, again, it's the elephant in the room. It's the conversation that a lot of people don't know how to have, afraid to have, just don't want to have, don't care to have, because they don't understand it, or they don't want to understand it. The truth of the matter, when we're talking what happens in the home stays in the home. And I always tell people, adults aren't just, they didn't wake up like that. We don't just wake up like this. There's a long history of trauma, abuse, neglect, and probably suicidal ideations as a child, and probably attempts. But once you become an adult, then you have the whole legal system behind you. Now you're a legal adult. You can do what you want to do, and now you're a threat to society because you're this way. But when you're a child, your parent can protect you and say, I'm taking my kid home, or
not bringing them around.
Just let them kind of fall to the wayside. So, I think, Erica, your job is to, are you just focused on kids?
No, my main, it's a twofold. Like, we want to speak to kids, but I also want to speak to parents. So, when we have sessions, we kind of separate everybody. So kids can kind of talk freely. But we want to speak to these parents and share, stories from other kids. And she, I showed them, I'm saying, hey, this girl was 6 years old. She killed herself. With a jump rope. It's real. It's happening, to your children. And like I said, we talk to our kids about sex. We talk to them about college, your future. We talk about, guns and, and don't join a gang. All this stuff except for this. And so I think I like to just recognize, help parents recognize the signs and just give them the tools that they need to have those conversations. You probably think that this isn't a conversation you need to have, but it is. Especially, like you said, bullying awareness month is next month, right? It's we talked about homes. Most children, their first experience of bullying happens in the home. It happens in the home. And people are like, oh, these kids, they soft, they this. I'm like, well, back in the day, we got bullied. If I got bullied, when Friday came, guess what? I got to go home with my friends and my cousins on my block and hang out or be in my room playing video games. Come Monday, something else happened, we moved on. Not now. Now they're creating fake pages. They texting your kids. They inboxing them. It's a constant thing. They're never able to escape it. At least, when we were growing up, you can kind of escape it. Even if Monday through Friday sucks, at least the weekend, if you went to your grandma's house or you went, wherever you went, you had to kind of have some type of safety threshold. There was a threshold, some type of buffer. But now, these kids it's a constant thing. And I think, sharing that with parents and helping them to see, listen, I know you want to tell us how you walk to school, with no shoes on, 5 miles in the snow. That was cool. But
that was cool.
Yeah, but it's not like that.
Both ways.
Yeah, but it's not like that anymore. It's so much more danger is in the palm of their hand. The world is literally in your child's hand, and it's attacking them and it's coming for them. And if we don't equip them and give them the tools, like you said, they're gonna be lost to the wayside. So when they become an adult, now we have this adult that they were bullied and they full of anger, and then now they're an adult. Now they're fighting. Now they're assaulting people. But had that been, like I said, had we got to the root back when they were a child, this wouldn't have happened. So I definitely love talking to parents and just exposing them and sharing, because a lot of parents, they don't believe. They're like, oh, I just thought, teenagers do that. They go in their room, they stay locked up. She broke up with her little boyfriend. It's not that serious. It's not that serious to you because you're an adult and you have a whole world. But for her, like, this is her world. Like, so it's a big deal. And I think just teaching parents, like, don't brush off, the small things. Let's talk about it. Like, why is she so broken up over this? And, helping her to cope with it instead of just brushing it off like, oh, you'll get over it. And it just builds up. So I definitely make it a mission to speak to parents and give them the tools that they need to speak to their kids. Because some parents are like, well, I feel like she's depressed, but I don't know what to say. I'm scared to say something. I think she's going to do something if I say something. But I think us having those conversations with them and giving them the tools that they need, to recognize the signs and even teaching them how to have the conversation. There are certain words you should say. These are trigger words. Don't use these words. Like, just give them the tools. No parent wants to bury their child. So if I come to you and say, hey, we can prevent this, you're going to be open to it and, receptive to the information.
So that's a good point that you just brought up. How do you have that conversation with kids? Like, to just, I don't know, like, how would you start that conversation?
So, well, one, if you tailor your conversation to your kid. No one knows your child better than you, right?
Okay.
And even if you don't have kids, I just know if you have siblings, you notice that your parents, they parented y'all differently because, me, I'm a sensitive one. Like, if my mama even yell a little bit, it's tears coming down my face, right? But my sister was like the complete opposite. Like, she told her the stove was hot, she gonna stick her hand on there for sure.
So you gotta boss up on her.
So yeah, it's like so. Okay. And so you have to recognize how to speak to your child. But if you feel like there's an issue, like I said, being point blank, let's just get to it. If I feel like you my child Ivy, I feel like you're not yourself. Do you feel like you want to hurt yourself? Point blank, I'm not gonna say, hey, are you, like, I feel like suicide isn't an issue that we can beat around the bush on. Depression isn't, even outside of suicide and depression, just a mental health, like, hey, do you feel okay? What's going on? Like, check in on your kids. Like, it's a simple conversation. And if you begin to get to know your child and, you'll recognize the small signs. And if it gets to a point where you're like, yeah, I think there may be an issue. Like, that's why we have organizations like our organization or his organization. I love that there's, like, all these organizations that are putting out resources that you can go to. You can go to Wayne County Mental Health Department and say, hey, and they'll give you the resources and the tools that you need to have those conversations. Like I said, just being point blank with your child and upfront is the best thing. Even if we're not talking about suicide, just period. Kids love, like, you just to be real with them. Like, they love it when you just real and genuine. They love that versus you saying, hey, I don't think if you just tell them, like, no, I'm not going to be able to do it. They're more receptive to that than you just to, like, beat around the bush. Like I said, just being point blank with your child, saying, hey, I've noticed XYZ. What's going on? Let's talk about it. You don't want to talk about me? Cool. You don't want to talk to me? Cool. Let me take you somewhere, let me find you someone, a mentor or whatever the case is that you can speak to, that you feel comfortable. You don't want to speak to me? That's fine. That's why I say it's important to bridge the gap between a church. Because they more than likely, but hey, we got a church home. Let's go to our pastors. Like, hey, imagine if your pastor was equipped to handle mental health issues. Like, they were certified in mental health awareness and, suicide prevention. And they can have that conversation. It can go completely differently versus, well, you guys just need to pray about it. And, like, that's not going to work. So, like I said, just being straightforward and blunt with your kids about the conversation, that's the best way. And just telling them, hey, if you ever feel that way, I'm here. You don't need to feel ashamed. Like, and they probably could tell them, hey, I was depressed too. I went through that too. Like, share your experience with your child. Let them know, like, hey, I've been there. Whether you recognize it or not, I'm sure at some point every black person has been depressed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I guarantee it.
Like, and just share that with them. Like, yeah, I felt like that too. Like, and just share it. And like I said, just sharing with them, being straightforward and getting to the point is the best way to go with kids. No matter how old they are, just being straightforward with them.
You want to answer that, Floyd?
What's that?
You want to answer that?
What about being straightforward? Yeah, I agree with that. It's like, if you want to address the issue of suicide, mental illness with your kids, they come at you with a question or whatever. Yeah, just be, how do I put it? Be straightforward with them, right? But don't be so straightforward with them that you'll push them away. You know what I'm saying?
And don't be abrasive.
Yeah, like because some people may, some kids may be kind of timid. They come up at you a little bit. You know what I'm saying? You know, they don't want like the whole thing like right then and there. You know, they probably just be like, okay, well, let me just, you know, give them to them a little bit at a time. Like, be real with them.
Yeah, let them lead the conversation.
Yeah. And that's what I was trying to get at.
Let them lead the conversation. Like, don't just like start, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, well, listen, we're going to go online. I'm going to get, like, no, just like.
Or even just let them, like you said, just you just follow their lead, you know, basically when they talking to you. And let them guide you to where, you know, you want them to go. You know, but because otherwise, I think that's really the best way to deal with it when you're dealing with kids. You know what I mean? Even with adults, sometimes too.
And sometimes I just want you to listen.
Yeah, a lot of times
that's important.
I had somebody tell me one time, because I used to be one of those types that somebody come up to me, hey, they ask me for help. You know, I'm ready to jump on. Oh, what do you need? What you need me to do? Until somebody came up to me and said, no, I just need you to listen. And a lot of times that's
because sometimes you can do or say too much.
Yeah. They said, just listen.
And then sometimes you can make matters worse.
And they be like, okay, you know what? Never mind.
Never mind. I'm straight. Now I feel worse than I did.
Yeah, you don't open up a whole can of worms.
And then a lot of times that help can also come off as patronizing, because it's not like, you know, what you're doing to help me out is not what I came to you with. You know what I mean? Because I find myself doing that. It's like, okay, now I understand. It's like, if I'm trying to reach out to somebody, all you got to do is just do A, B, C, D, and E. You know, that's not what it is. You know,
it's not that simple.
Yeah, like some of the common things I had people told me, you just need a hobby, you just need a break, you just need to relax, you just need to get something to drink. You know what I'm saying? And I'm just sitting in my mind like, wow, all these years, and I never thought about none of these simple solutions that you just offered me in like 5 seconds. You know, actually telling somebody to get something to drink, that's the worst thing you can do.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Involving drugs, alcohol,
because
that's the worst thing.
Because when it comes to, when you think about mental illness, a lot of times it's a comorbid condition. Depression is a comorbid condition. If somebody's alcoholic, more than likely they're dealing with depression. Absolutely. If somebody is a drug addict, more than likely they're dealing with depression. Somebody's a workaholic, more than likely they're dealing with depression. Somewhere along the line.
Because of that escape.
Yep. It's depression is a comorbid condition. It's always underlying when there's another condition.
Yeah, it's a coping mechanism.
Yep. So the last thing that you want to tell somebody when somebody comes up to you and say, hey, I'm depressed. Hey, let's go get something to drink. Then you're gonna cause a whole nother can of worms to open up. So a lot of times it's like when people just ask you for help, don't offer up a bunch of solutions for them. Just sit there and listen, because a lot of times that's really all they want. So I agree with you, especially when they come to kids. You know. Just listen.
We're going to pause for a minute. Everyone, you are watching The Glow Up. We are streaming here live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. We are talking everything suicide prevention. If you want to join this conversation, hit us up. The number is 313-355-6018. If you're just joining the conversation, I have Erica and Floyd in the studio talking all things as it pertains to suicide prevention, how to talk to your kids, how to talk to the community, and how to just be okay having the conversation. Just like you can have a conversation about anything, you should be able to have a conversation on how to recognize mental illness, depression, how to talk about what the root cause of the depression really is. Because, you know, like I said earlier, and I will never go back on this, I say it loud and proud, that it's not always a chemical imbalance.
It's not.
It's not. You know, just, you know, last year, you know, as I kind of entered into the political realm, you know, I've noticed the lack of resources in the community, and how veterans was coming home, living on the streets, the homelessness, women that have been trafficked since they were kids, sexually abused, mentally abused, raped. I mean, it's almost as if, like, well, damn.
They were just
thrown away. So when you're saying that I feel like I want to kill myself, well, how long have you been dealing with this issue? And now you're at the point to where you can't take it anymore. And I was actually looking online. I found a stat that I was actually shocked about, that men is a higher percentage of men with suicide attempts.
Yeah.
Than women. And I would
say suicide attempts or successful suicides, because I had and they might be different now.
Okay.
But because I know when I was on active duty, we used to do these. We used to get these briefings quite a bit, and one was on suicide. And the last thing that I remember hearing, they say that women attempted suicide 4 times more than men, but then they said men are 4 times more successful.
Because they tend to choose violent ways. They choose a gun.
Yeah.
So
whereas,
more likely to
but
go through with it.
Still, as far as the numbers go, I've yet to see a hard number.
And you know what? I really don't even care what the numbers are. Mm-hmm. Like, stats to me is just like buoy. You know, because the truth of the matter is this issue exists and it should not.
Yep.
Absolutely.
You're right.
So we can talk stats. I mean, I can pull up any type of art. I mean, I don't really care.
And it's growing.
And
it is.
It don't mean anything. But, like, the real issue at hand is the fact that this is happening in our community and we're not talking about it.
And we need to.
Yeah, it's like we talking about, like, we're in a pandemic. Like, but suicide has been an epidemic in our community long before COVID.
Sure has.
Like, long before. And, like, even... You know, you and I spoke about it briefly. Like even in this pandemic, we seeing numbers rise up because now people are being forced to isolate. Mm-hmm. You have people losing love.
I don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you have people. You know what I'm saying? Like I know a girl. She lost both her parents and a sibling from COVID within a matter of months. Like you can't tell me that she's supposed to go on as a normal functioning human now.
Like it's just another day. You're right.
Yeah, like it's
gonna affect you.
Yeah, like it's one thing to lose someone. Like that's hard enough just to lose one person. But to lose people consistently, back to back, unknowingly, they're in the hospital. I can't go visit them.
You can't say your last.
I can't see them. I can't speak to them.
So
I can't speak to them.
Year.
You know, like unfortunately, you know, we lost our mother-in-law right at the beginning of the pandemic from COVID, and it was like the whole time we couldn't see her, and it was like that is something that you know what I'm saying we struggle with. My husband struggled with like not being able to see her. And then having a funeral, and we can only have so many people here. So now we can't even grieve properly as a family. Like, so it's like, I feel like we're going to continue, as long as this pandemic goes on, we're going to continue to see numbers rise because people are like being kind of like programmed to isolate. You're being programmed to social distance. You're being programmed to not like hugging and physical touch. Like, that's important to people. Like, that mean, like, you know, like you see the commercial with the lady, like, I haven't hugged my mom in a year.
I did see that.
Like, can you imagine that? Like, not, like, you going through something and the first person you want is normally your mom. I can't go hug her because I don't want to be the reason that she gets something. Like, there's a story of the young lady that had it, her and her mom stayed together. She had COVID, and her mom eventually got it and died. Like, do you think that, like, she's going to be able to go on functioning as a human? Like, she got, not only did she lose her mom, but to an extent, she's kind of feeling like it's my fault.
It's her fault.
Like, so we're going to see, like, so many, like, years from now, we're going to see so many, like, issues breaking off from this pandemic. And I think that's why it's important now that we, like, speak to people and share, you know what I'm saying, share our stories, share our resources, create more resources, like, collaborate with other organizations, especially in our community, like, you know, where, like, I love referring people to black therapists or black, you know, black, that they can speak to, counselors that they can talk to that look like them and see, hey, it's, like, it's perfectly fine, like, I look like you, I talk like you, like, you know what I'm saying, like, we can relate more, especially men, like, having a male therapist that they can go to, like, black men deal with issues that, like, you know, white therapists, not to say that he's not trained and capable, but they can just relate more. I think
want somebody from the block.
Yeah, they can relate to how it feels when the police are behind you. Like, they can relate to, like, that you all constantly have to look in the back mirror. Like, that's not normal that you, like, your heart start beating fast. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, that's not normal in our community. And I think that's why we need more of us to step into the professional field.
Yeah, I do 100% agree with that. Because I thought you said something else I misunderstood it, but I do agree with you. Because when you talk about the psychotherapist community, psychological community, that's what it is. That
mental health professionals.
What is it? I think it's called clinical bias. Is a legitimate thing. You know, if I was to go into to see a white therapist, and it actually happened to me at the VA. Actually happened to me at the VA in 2008, where and I say I'm having a depressive episode, and my clothes are disheveled, and my locks are just all over the place, right? And this white therapist, just looking at me, oh, okay, well, it's obviously that you're dealing with schizophrenia. So let me just go ahead and give you this medication. That's one, it's the wrong medication. Two, you're overly medicated, and it's not going to do anything for you, but it's make what you came in for worse. You know what I'm saying? And that actually exists. But when it comes to it's a Caucasian seeing a Caucasian therapist, that Caucasian gonna sit down and listen intently to everything that person is saying, so they can make sure they're getting them right. But it's often when they see us, we are going to get misdiagnosed on rep. So it is important that we get more of us.
Do you think it's a misdiagnosis, or is it just based on what I see and understand, this is the criteria that you fit in, this is the code and the diagnosis that you fall in? But I never lived on a block. I've never been followed by the police. I think it's just like with black therapists, it's the experience.
Yeah.
And not only just the race thing, just other therapists that have been where you've been.
Yeah, it's a culture thing.
Yeah. It's a culture thing.
I'm sorry, it was called cultural bias. Cultural bias, not clinical bias. I'm sorry. It's called cultural bias.
Like we step in a room full of 50 white people, and I see Ivy sitting over there, and I go, me and her instantly, we're connected through our culture. Like we're instantly, I could not know anything.
Right, because I want to know when she got her hair done, because soon as
I'm looking at her purse, like we instantly connected because of our shared experience, regardless of she might have grew up in a 2-parent home. We still have a shared cultural experience. So I feel like, that shapes your perspective. So as a therapist, that also is going to shape how you deal with your client because of your perspective and
your experience.
Yeah, it's like, I'm not going to just say he's paranoid. Oh, he's a black man.
The police are following you.
Yeah, like you're not paranoid. You're not paranoid. Like, you're right to look at them the rearview mirror after you pass them to make sure okay, they still there. Like that's unfortunately it's a normal thing. But I'm not gonna say no, you're paranoid.
And then you will know how it feels when you said stop at a stoplight and the cop pulls up next to you, and you understand how your heart rate is gonna go up automatically.
Yeah,
even if you're not doing nothing.
Yeah, or even if I am speeding a little bit, because I do got a little heavy spin. But when they stop me, I'm instantly on guard. I'm instantly your mind instantly goes back to say, I don't want this to be the last time. You on the phone hey, I'm being stopped by the police, blah blah blah. Unfortunately, that's we have to have those conversations with our kids. They don't. We have to, I have an 8-year-old at home. I have to explain to him when we go to the store, keep your hands out your pocket. And he but why my hands are cold? But I have to explain it to him, it's unfortunate that I have to even have that conversation with him at 8 years old.
So we just talk about I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but I do apologize. But this is a great conversation, and it appears as though we are at our mark. It is almost time to go, so I do want to kind of wrap things up and thank you guys for both coming into the studio, having this conversation. These conversations are never long enough. I promise. I'm gonna have to have a part 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, and all the way.
We have to do an afterglow or something.
An afterglow. Oh yeah, we could do a Facebook thing or whatever. So as we wrap up, everyone just let our viewers and listeners know how they can find you. Okay. Ladies first.
Oh, okay. You can find me on Facebook at Erica Townsend or LA Townsend. I'm on Instagram as Coach LA Townsend, and our organization is Be Resilient, and just be on the lookout. Like I said, we have classes and certification classes coming up this fall, so just tap in so you can be tuned in and join us and be a part of the organization if you're interested.
And I got a couple of ways you can reach out to me and my organization. The first thing I want to start off on, if you if you go on Facebook, I have a Facebook page that is dedicated to spreading awareness of mental health and depression and suicide. Like things we were talking about today on Facebook. It's called the No Way But Up Foundation. And you can find resources and stuff on that. It's posted almost weekly, but within the last couple of months, not so much, but I'm getting back on it. If you also want to find out about my organization, reach out to us to see what we can do for you as well, because we do a lot of things in the community. Look up SoMishGrad.com. That's Southern Michigan Graduate Chapter, or Groove 5 Groove Social Fellowship Incorporated. That's our website. And that's pretty much about it as far as me.
Okay. Well, y'all know me. I'm back next week. Peace out, y'all.